Welcome to West Kentucky Community and Technical College's Cooking at the College. I'm your host, Chef Brett McCarthy, and I want to cook with you. Welcome to West Kentucky Community and Technical College's Cooking at the College. I'm your host, Chef Brett McCarthy, and we're going to be talking about étouffée. And if you're not familiar with that, that's a Louisiana dish. It's crawfish or shrimp with that. And it's got some very simple ingredients in it, and we're just going to get started. But before we get started, we're going to go over and I'm going to show you how to make some good rice. All too often, what makes a dish, especially where rice is on the bottom, is not made properly. So I want to show you how to make a good basic rice and do it well and make it easy for you so that you're not getting confused at all and doing it the wrong way, because good rice makes a difference in this dish. And if you make a lot of things like gumbo or étouffée, as the case may be, rice is a very big part of making that dish properly. So I guarantee we'll see you in a minute around at the stove. Well, welcome back to West Kentucky Community and Technical College's Cooking at the College. We are going to get started with the étouffée first. I know I talked about the rice, but this takes a little bit of time. Now, normally with étouffée, you start with the roux, and then you add the vegetables. But I'm going to do something just a little bit different, because unlike a gumbo, the étouffée uses a blonde roux. It's not quite as cooked out. And a roux is basically just flour and butter. You melt the butter and you add roux. In some instances, when they make a roux, they use a clarified butter, meaning that they've taken out all the whey or all the solids and just the fat, it remains behind. But we're using whole butter. And I'm actually going to use some salted butter, which is, not what you would use if you were baking or something like that. But it's just going to add a little bit more flavor to it. We have about a cup of chopped celery. We have 1 medium onion chopped. We have about a half a cup of green bell pepper. And we have about 2 ounces or so of flour. Okay, so I'm going to start by turning on the stove, of course. And we're going to add this butter. And what I'm going to do, just because I found that the vegetables have a tendency to not get as tender when I make the roux first, is I'm going to actually make a vegetable roux in doing this. And this is just my version. I'm sure there's many other versions. It may not even be the most authentic version, but the flavor is right there and it tastes wonderful. Étouffée actually means to smother. So we're actually smothering the rice, and you can use either crawfish or you can use shrimp. And I have a little bit of chicken stock here, and that's just to kind of thin it out if it gets too thick, but you certainly could use a clam broth, or you could make your own broth out of the shells from the crawfish. We're actually using crawfish that has already been peeled, so I don't have any shells to work with. You can also use the shrimp shells and make actually a shrimp stock. But that's just to kind of thin it out if it gets a little bit too thick, and sometimes that can happen. Normally you don't need any stock at all. Some people would use water, okay? So we're just going to get that started right now. We'll get that butter melted. Like I said, normally you would do the roux first, but I've been doing something a little bit different lately, and it's been coming out just wonderful. And as with most stuff, you learn by doing, and you put that right in there, and just like that. Now I'm going to sweat these, and what I mean by sweating is I'm not going to saute it. If I were to saute it, I'd actually let the steam escape, but I'm going to actually sweat them. I'm going to put that lid right on there and just let that cook out like that. I'm going to let that cook out for just a few minutes, and we'll put this all away. I don't have an assistant today, so I don't have somebody to clean up after me, which is really a sad thing. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to do rice. Okay, and I got this butter already melted. I got about a 1/4 cup of butter in there already. Okay, and I'm going to add a little bit of onion. Okay, I'm not going to add all this onion. Just about half an onion is what I want to add. I'm going to cook that out. This is just a little piece of onion skin. We'll take that out. Got a couple of those little pieces of onion skin. You can see I didn't chop this up. Okay. All right, so we're going to cook that up. We want to cook that onion just until it's a little bit translucent. And then we're going to add the rice to it. The rice is always going to be, or the liquid to rice will always be 2 to 1. So if you use 1 cup of rice, you're going to use 2 cups of broth. If you use 2 cups of rice, you're going to use 4 cups of broth. You always heat your broth up. Now you can use just regular canned chicken broth, or you can make your own broth. It really doesn't matter. You can even use some of the vegetarian broths they have out there, or a low sodium chicken broth. But a broth is really what really makes, I think, a good rice. Now obviously in a normal étouffée, they just use some boiled white rice. I'm trying to do it a little bit fancier, a little bit nicer. And I find that for the people that I've prepared this for, they kind of like it this way. So again, this is maybe a little bit of a dash from traditional, but you know, we're going to do it anyways. All right, we're going to cook that out. We're going to add our rice. Stir that around. And not to plug Uncle Ben's, but I really like Uncle Ben's long grain rice. I've used it ever since I was a kid. And there's certain things that I'm just as happy to use that is of a generic form. I'm not dead set on never using anything that is a non-name brand, but for some reason I find that the Uncle Ben's comes out much better. And again, usually it's white rice, but I like a little bit of color. I like this contrast, especially with the nice reddish, pinkish colors of the shrimp or the crawfish. So I'm going to add just a little bit of ground turmeric. It's about 1/2 teaspoon, and that's just going to give it a little bit of color. Just like that, it's about 1/2 teaspoon. And that's going to make that a nice golden rice. Okay, and we're going to turn down this heat just a little bit as I duck under the camera, and you didn't see my head right there. Of course, I'm in high definition now. You won't have that on cable, but if you watch us online, you'll get that. Okay, we're going to put that in there. That's 4 cups of broth. Remember, I said 2 to 1. Just going to go just like that. And we're going to bring this up to a boil. Okay. As soon as it comes to a boil, we're going to put the lid on, and we're looking at about 15 to 20 minutes, and we'll have perfect rice. You don't want to bring it to a boil and let it keep boiling. You want to put the lid on as soon as it comes to a boil. So you give it a good stir and let it come to a boil. And that flavor is going to be perfect. The rice is going to be done perfectly. This would not be the ratio if you were doing a wild rice. So you want to be careful. With a wild rice, you're going to need a little bit more liquid. Okay, so I'm just going to bring that up to a boil there. And it shouldn't take all that long. Say, watch pot never boils. This one is being watched and it's boiling. So this is kind of an interesting phenomenon. So I guess that dispels that myth right there. All right, so we're going to put that right on there, and that is done. And once you do that, you can actually turn that heat down because you don't want it boiling too fast. And we're looking at about 15 to 20 minutes. You can put it on low and you're just fine. So going back at the ranch, we have the étouffée going, and you can see that the onions and the celery and the green bell peppers have softened up quite a bit. Okay, and I'm going to add this flour. And you can see that's just really, really nice. And we're going to cook that out. And this is where we want to keep that lid off because we want to cook that out really nice. And we do want it to brown up a little bit. Okay? We're going to keep that lid off, and we're just going to cook that. And when we come back, I'll show you how this is done and how this is finished up. And we're also going to make some beignets today. So we're really going all the way down to Louisiana. We'll see you back in just a little while. Well, welcome back to Cooking at the College. We are making étouffée, and we're going to also show you how to make a very good rice and also some beignets today. We have the celery, onions, and green peppers in there, and they're sauteing. We've added the flour already. We've made a nice roux. And now we're going to add about a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of onion powder, and a little bit of cayenne pepper. We're going to put that right in there. Going to add a little bit, about half a cup. I say a little bit. I like to use that very specific terminology. A little bit and this and that and a smidgen of that. This is a half a cup of diced tomatoes. And we're going to put that in there with juice. All right. And we're going to add a couple of bay leaves. Okay, you'll take those out before this is all done with. Then we're going to add some already pre-peeled and deveined cooked crawfish. You can buy this. This is wild caught, so this is a very nice product. It's actually harvested right from the bayou there, and it's really nice. And I'm going to put it juice and all. Put that right in there. Okay. And we'll put that right in there, and we'll stir that around. Okay. And just because I'm a little dangerous, I'm just going to add a little bit of broth to it. Like I said, you could use any kind of broth, but I just don't want this to become too overcooked there. We're going to simmer that for about 10 minutes. And that's all we have to do. And I'm just going to turn that heat down and just simmer that away. Put my little plates over here. My rice is almost done. Now the key about rice is you don't peek. There's no peeking. So I don't want to show you what it looks like, but you can see that I have the flame just extremely low at this point in time, and that's just enough, and you can see the steam coming out. That's actually boiling away. About 15 to 20 minutes, and it's going to be done. And it really doesn't matter how much rice you're going to do. It's still going to be about 20 minutes, because the key is you bring it to a boil first before you put the lid on, and then from there, everything is relative. It's still going to be about 20 minutes. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio. 20 minutes is the cap, and that's for long grain white rice. Obviously, different types of rice, such as basmati and jasmine and wild rice, are going to have different cooking times. But for long grain white rice, that's about the time that you're looking at. Okay, so we use a little bit of onion, some butter, salted butter. Stock, perfect, and it's going to be a really nice rice, and it won't be too chewy, it won't be too tender, it'll be just the kernels of rice will be nice and separated, and that's what we want. Okay, so when we get back, we're going to go over to the baker's bench, and we're going to make us some beignets. Now, if you've never made beignets, I'm telling you, they're French donuts, they're perfect. It's a Louisiana tradition, and I don't think the Café du Monde will do it any better. Thank you. Welcome back to Cooking at the College. I'm your host, Chef Brett McCarthy, and we're going to be making beignets. And beignets have a couple of different procedures involved in them, but basically it's just a basic dough, and we got 2 cups of flour in here. We have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We have 3 teaspoons of baking powder and 2 tablespoons of sugar. And we're going to add 3/4 cups of buttermilk to it. And that's the traditional recipe. We've actually modified this recipe a little bit, and we served this at a function that we went to recently. Made about 250 of these, fried them on site. This was at the Lord's Foundation event, so it was really quite nice and fun, and we just enjoy doing that. Traditionally, when these are all done, we just take a little bit of powdered sugar and decorate it with a little powdered sugar, and that's about it. But in some cases, you would do chocolate sauce or some cherries or something like that with it. But essentially, it's just powdered donuts. They're not entirely too sweet, so they're really good with having with coffee, especially chicory coffee. And if you've never had chicory coffee, that's something to get used to, I suppose. And so we're going to just add this buttercream there. I should say chicory is an acquired taste. Or it sure is. Okay, I'm going to mix that in there. Buttermilk is going to make it really nice. I'm going to add maybe just a little bit. I brought over the buttermilk. Sometimes it's just a little bit drier than I want it to be, so I might add another 1/4 cup or so, and you just want to make sure you add enough so that it comes together. I'm going to take my hands and get in there. It's one of those things that you can't do entirely with a move that in there just like that. You have a little excess left over, that's all right. You can pick that up as you're bringing it together. And you're just going to knead it until it's a nice, smooth mass. Find you need a little bit more flour. It depends on whether it's winter or summer as to how much moisture you have to add. Obviously during the summer the humidity is high enough, so sometimes requires less liquid in your dough. And you can see how this is picking up. This started out really dry. And it's just picking up all that excess product there. I'm just going to go just like that. Okay. And I'm kneading down. I'm not tearing. I'm just pushing down. It's slow motion. This is not the camera doing tricks on you. It's just me slowing down. Okay, I'm going to put just a little bit of flour there. Keep it from getting too sticky. Okay. All right. Okay, we're going to let this rest for about 10 minutes. We're going to fry that baby right up, okay? And when we do, we're going to actually roll this out, and we're going to cut them into something of a, well, it's kind of a rhombus of sorts. It's that's the traditional shape, and it's basically just a rectangle that's kind of askew. So that's the traditional shape, and that's what we're going to cut it into, and fry them off and powder them, and they'll be just fine and dandy. So we'll see you in a bit. Welcome back to Cooking at the College, and I believe, voila, our rice is done, and it is just beauteous. We can see that, and we're going to just fluff that with a fork, or with a spoon, as it were. Like, I don't know what a fork looks like. And just going to do that, and we're going to put that rice right in our bowl here. Now, while you weren't looking, I added a little bit of chopped scallion and some parsley to the étouffée and cooked that out for just a little bit. And the étouffée has been cooking. It's beautiful now. And we're going to just, by the way, this is how you can pick it up if you don't have another yeah, we just got a nice, it says weeped quite a bit there. Very nice. It's like a stew almost. All right. And we're just going to take this and we're just going to put that right over the rice. You can see how beautiful this looks. I hope my big head is not in the way. You can see how nice this looks. All right. Look at that. Smothering away. stove there. Wipe the edges. Is that not? Oh, that is just beautiful. Put a little bit of extra chopped scallion. Do it like the real good chefs there. All right. And that is just beautiful. And we have Étouffée, and like I said, I like that yellow background. That's why I put it in there. Normally it would be on white rice. I think that's traditional. Having not been from Louisiana, I had to kind of develop my own little spin on it, but these days that's what most chefs do. They start with a traditional item and they just kind of change it up a little bit. But this is very traditional, very nice, and bon appetit. In just a few moments, I'm going to show you how to roll out the dough for the beignets, fry them, and we're going to do that as well. See you back in just a minute. Welcome back to Cooking at the College, and our dough has rested, and you can see it's softened up a little bit. It has sugar in it, so it's not going to be as pliable and stretchable as, say, like pizza dough. So it's really easy to work with, and sugar actually breaks gluten down a little bit, so it makes it very nice and easy to work with. We're just going to roll that out. We're going to roll it out to about a 1/4 inch thick. We start from the center, just as your mama taught you way back when, okay? And we're going to just square off the sides there, just like that. And we're going to come down like this. Okay. And then we're going to just make little pieces. Okay, and that's all there is to it. They're not quite all the same size. That doesn't really matter. Just like that. And you can roll this out and make a little bit more. So nothing is wasted. That's the nice thing about it. It's like making biscuits. Nothing is wasted until you get down to that last little tiny biscuit. Yeah, that's about the right size. Okay, I'll be able to get one more out of there. I just want to test this out a little bit. I'm going to just throw in a little piece here. See if that's frying up. I think it needs about a couple more minutes. All right, I might have to do a little dance to kind of keep us busy here while I'm waiting for my oil to heat. So you can see if the oil is done and perfect, the product will pop right up and be ready to go. You know, start to fry. This looks like it's almost ready. Okay, we'll throw that right in there. Okay. Just test one out and see how it works here. Yeah, it looks like it's doing just fine there. I'll put in about 4 or 5 of them there. Okay. You can see they're just popping right back up. Okay. And they will puff right up. They'll get pretty puffy. This is just like a donut dough, except there's yeast raised and there's also chemically leavened donuts. This is a chemically leavened donut. Prior to this, they used to make a pâte à choux, which is a pâte à choux was eggs and flour that was beaten on the stove. And they put that together, and then they'd make a dough from there, and that's how they made it. Okay, but they have a little bit easier dough than what a pâte à choux. A pâte à choux is kind of fickle, and it's a little difficult to work with, so We don't do the pat a choux as much anymore. So you can see that these are puffing up here. Nice and pretty there. And we're just going to let these fry for a few minutes. And when we get back, we're going to test them out and see how they came out. And we'll see you back in just a moment. Okay, welcome back. And as you can see, these have become a nice golden brown, and we're just going to drain them just ever so slightly. All right, got these. These will be ready in just a couple seconds, so I might come back to them in just a second there. Just put these in here, nice and purty. You all purty. This old northern boy is really getting southern. All right, and we're just going to I just took some powdered sugar. I put it in just a single mesh strainer, and I just go over it like this. And that's pretty, okay? And we're going to have our man who keeps the time come in here and try our étouffée, and try away. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for inviting me.
Very nice to have you on the show.
Well, glad to be here, sir.
Well, thank you.
All
We'll
right.
try the étouffée, see if you like that. While you're doing that, I'm going to get the rest of my...
Oh, wonderful. Just wonderful.
I told him to tell me if he didn't like it. He's supposed to tell me. Okay, so if he says it's wonderful, it is wonderful.
One more bite.
All right. Okay.
And
Now, if you
dessert?
do be so kind to burn the skin off of your fingers and
Well, thank you
try
so
some of
very
the
much.
donuts there. Is that tasty? This is more kind of a savory donut. It's not quite as sweet, and if you're someone who doesn't really like real sweet stuff, but you still want a little bit of a snack, I'm going to tell you that the beignets are just fine. So we've done étouffée, crawfish or shrimp. It's just a wonderful dish. We got beignets here, and I'm going to tell you, join me down at the bayou again when we talk about something else. I guarantee, and I want to cook with you.
So cute.
Mike up.
Wake up.
Are we ready yet? Hey, hey, hey. Yeah.
Rhombus. An equilateral parallelogram. Yeah.
Hey, I said parallelogram.
Yeah, but that could be any, like, you know. I mean, anything can be a parallelogram.
Well, triangle can't be.
Well, that's true.
That's what.